us. So what's unique about your audition journey, Max? I mean, everyone's is unique, but what's particularly unique about yours in 2024, 25?
Yeah. So, funny thing, I'm doing the college audition process for a second time.
Oh,
I'm currently on a gap year.
uh-huh.
Last year, I did the whole process, did all the things, all the auditions, and I ended up committing to UArts. And as a lot of us know, they closed indefinitely.
Hmm.
So I had my college audition process, summer break, and then we were right back at it.
Wow. So must be mixed emotions, right?
Yeah, bittersweet.
Yeah. Um, so how did you find TFCA?
So, my senior year, I had gone to Pittsburgh Unifieds,
Hmm.
which is run by the amazing Bunny Oldham.
PUA.
And after after UArts closed, Bunny had created this entire effort called the Help UArts effort, which was a Get Accepted portal where I just put up a bunch of my videos, and there were like 100 programs that all looked at these videos, and it was a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of emails. And she saw me and personally reached out to me and was like, I remember you from PUA. I'm so sorry this is happening. And I had reached out to her, being like, well, this effort is really, really awesome. I got a really big scholarship to UArts, and that's how I was able to go. And none of these schools are able to give me that same scholarship money in like June.
Right.
So I'm kind of lost. So I'm thinking I might redo the process.
Hmm.
What do you know about TFCA? And that it just bloomed from there. She got me connected to you, and it was just amazing from
Do
there.
you remember how you heard about TFCA initially? Was it just kind of like random social media
Yeah,
word of mouth
I
kind of
think it
thing?
honestly might have been Ayub,
Hmm.
might have been him, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. What is that? And then I did all the researching.
Yeah. Oh, because you guys auditioned at the same time.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so you're here because you need that sweet, sweet scholarship money once again.
I need it.
And that's our goal is everybody gets, if not a full ride, like absolutely as close as you can get with super minimal loans, like ideally under like $4,000 a year, because,
Yeah,
which is it's a big goal, but
big ask.
you know, we're confident that when you prep right, which you have, your people will, you know, people
Show
will
up.
want you in their programs, and so they'll make it work.
Yeah.
What was different? What is different from last year's process to this year's process, aside from the kind of straight up TFCA's paying all those many audition and um, application fees?
Yeah. So last year, I had never really had any formal coaching. Like, obviously, I've done shows, and I mean, every audition you show up to is basically a little mini class, but
Mhm.
I'd never had any one-on-one official coaching. So TFCA has like really shown up and like opened these doors for me that I never even knew existed. I mean, last year I kind of thought I was like, I think I have like a pretty good understanding of like what works good for me and the songs I should sing. And then I started coaching and I was like, oh, no, actually, this is actually so much better. Um, so that has just been like the most like massive blessing. And I feel like as like an actor, as a performer, and like as a person, I've just like completely transformed into something new.
I don't know if you remember it verbatim, but it was something to the effect that it was just early on in the getting you set up with all your coaches at TFCA, and you said something like, this is something that you kind of like a dream come true or something you've always needed, which is people not only believing in you, but getting behind you and saying, we're going to put you in front of the right people and make sure it happens. Which means, making sure that you're auditioning for schools that really fit you, and you knew a lot about that yourself, but that just was really like, yeah, this is why TFCA needs to exist and why our donor money is so well spent, because someone who's so talented like you, um, it does, it creates potentially a whole nother level of undeniable, like, we need this kid in our program, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of naturally talented, so that was verified, not just talented, but skilled. That was verified by a super cool experience you had in May, which I think was kind of an impetus for the re-auditioning as well. Yeah.
Mhm. Are we hinting at the
Yeah,
gym
you went to the
award?
Jimmies. Yeah. So what are the Jimmies for those who don't know? And it's not a secret. And like, yeah, how did that all factor in? If it did, I know it's factored into your life this year to a certain degree.
Yeah. So if you're unaware, the Jimmy Awards are the National High School Musical Theater Awards held in New York City. It's a week-long, crazy experience. And I think what was so amazing about it to me was that it was the first time that I was put among all these other kids that are just so talented and so passionate about the same things that I'm passionate about. And
Mhm.
I'm working with all these professionals. I mean, where I'm on a Broadway stage, I got to see the Tonys, and it's like I'm literally like living out the dream come true. And when I was in that moment of like, I fought so hard for this process and it sold me so short. I don't know if this is for me. I went to the Jimmys and I was like, this is it. Like this is what I have to do. Like it's just like completely undeniable.
So
So it was
early
so
June, you
important.
found out UArts is a bust. Do you remember what day it was?
So the news article I think like was May 31st.
And then your life fell apart and you didn't know. And then the Jimmies, when did you leave for the Jimmies?
I left for the Jimmys I think around like the second week of June.
Wow, that's really like providential timing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're from Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Those of you that are
Mhm.
old like me remember the Oak Ridge Boys. Elvira was their famous song. I won't sing it. And what was your regional entrance into the Jimmies? What's the
Our
name of the
regional,
competition?
it is the Marquee Awards in
Hmm.
Knoxville, Tennessee. And fun fact, it was their first year ever existing. So
Oh,
I was the inaugural winner.
as for the role of Dimitri and Anastasia, right?
Yes.
And so Max, so had they picked how many finalists out of how many of you were there and how many finalists?
So it was 12 schools
Hmm.
and at least one male identifying and one female identifying from each school.
That's
There
awesome.
were more, but they narrowed that down into four male identifying and four female identifying finalists.
And you were the best actor winner. So then at the Jimmys, how many people were there and how many people were finalists? And you were not a finalist, but I'm going to say what was awesome about your Jimmy's experience for us in the public.
There were, I think, 102 people.
Hmm.
Yeah, 51 programs, 102 people. Um, yeah, what was
And
the
they
rest
narrowed
of
it.
the
How
question?
many finalists did they narrow it down to?
Oh, yes. And that was narrowed down to another eight finalists, four and four.
So, yeah, but you managed to be featured, and we're gonna post the link somewhere. I don't know, doing this pointy thing. Um, yeah, what was your awesome solo? That was just not a long solo, but it was all I needed when Awesome Bunny from PUA Pittsburgh Unified said, You need to meet this kid. And I I heard this clip and I was like, okay. So tell us about that, how that came down and what it was.
Yeah, so I was in the feature group, which is a huge medley of a bunch of different musicals. And in the Wicked section, it was Dancing Through Life. And I got the big belty solo in the Dancing Through Life section. And that, like, I was just like so ecstatic. Because obviously the Jimmys was a hard, like 11 days. And but when I got that solo, I was like, we're set.
And he do kill it. Check it out at the link. So it was like Norbert Leo Butz, Derek Klena, famous people, Max, and then Jonathan Bailey in the film. So it's that lineage, right?
Yeah.
You're forever a Fiero. You're what do they call it? The Brotherhood of the White Pants, I think. You didn't have to
if
wear
it
white pants.
if it's on a Broadway stage, it counts.
Yeah, yeah, it totally does. And costume. He didn't wear white pants. Jonathan Bailey didn't wear white pants, so it's okay.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah. So that was definitely a glimpse of so much talent. Um, okay, so you are a young arts musical theater winner with distinction, which we used to call a finalist, meaning you are one of the, how many in the country? 20?
Oh God, I think it's like 12,
12
15.
MTs and 12 actors, maybe.
I think so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is amazing. They don't really the statistics for how many people apply to this adjudicated, incredibly prestigious national award. There are basically two um always acknowledged nationally prestigious musical theater awards, and Max has been involved with both, which is really amazing. So the Jimmys is one, and not every high school participates, but
Mhm.
those who do, that's, like a whole lot of talent. Like you said, a whole lot of talent and passion, and everybody's earned their way there. And then Young Arts is the same thing. Um, and so you are one of the 12 musical theater finalists. So did you do Young Arts last year? Did you apply last year?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. And did TFCA factor into just your decision to audition for Young Arts, or we never take credit for our student success. I didn't know you before you sang Dancing Through Life, and you were already spectacular then. But is there anything specific about your TFCA coaching that you think contributed to that? And if the answer is no, we'll just cut this part.
TFCA 1,000,000% opened that door. I mean, last year, I think I knew the idea of young arts, but I mean, knowing me, I probably sold myself short and didn't
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
But TFCA completely was like, we're gonna do it. And
Yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't for redoing the process, meeting TFCA, doing all this, that door completely would not have opened for me.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's so exciting, and you're going to be there so soon. Um, so that's awesome. And you already did how many auditions at Pittsburgh? It's a clearinghouse audition, but how many schools have you seen already at Pittsburgh Unified?
Somewhere around 20-ish.
Hmm.
Like I've been in like specific contact.
Yeah, so you've already gotten some interest, some callback. Have you gotten some offers? You have, right?
Yes.
That's awesome. And then some big old callbacks coming up. And
Eh,
let's show you the money, show us the money, because
hey.
we're all the TFCA involved adults, all of them are volunteers. I want the world to know that, because none of the donor money goes to us, it goes to the students. But we have awesome, and I'm not really one of these people as much as a couple of our alumni parents who are on the TFCA board, who know a lot about money negotiations when it comes to financial aid, and um, that and really help the scholars every year. So yeah, we've got it's only just begun, because the acceptances are awesome, but then as soon as they happen, we're gonna help you work for the money. For sure, for sure.
Mhm.
Um, what's easier about doing this in a gap year, and is there anything harder about doing it in a gap year, doing this process, since you've done both?
Mm. I would say the easy part is that obviously I don't have to worry about being in school.
Hmm.
Um, I have my days and I have all this time to work on my material and try and like put energy into it and find new things in it constantly. But I promised myself that on my gap year I was not going to rot in my bed.
Yeah,
So I've stayed very, very busy. I've been working a lot.
you have at least two jobs at all given times, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I've been staying very busy and I mean, right now, this is not my home. I'm house sitting. So
Yeah.
I've been finding the time, I've been trying to balance that artistic time and the time that I know I need to make for myself to not rot in my bed.
Hmm. Yeah, which is the life of an artist. Essentially, you have to be super self-motivated. Yeah, and pay your bills at the same time. So not always easy. Especially, are you excited about the prospect of auditioning for a lot of schools, kind of at the same, over the same 6 days, or is that overwhelming, or both?
I'm really, I'm just really, really excited. And there is obviously like the nerves of
Hmm.
it being an audition. It's like, oh, it's 1 week. What if I'm sick? But last year I sold myself short.
Hmm.
And another thing I promised myself this year, what I was going to do is I was going to see it all the way 101% through.
Mhm.
So now I'm excited to go to Chicago and go into every room with a smile on my face and excited to show them what I have to offer.
So if TFCA, if we hadn't existed or you hadn't discovered TFCA, what do you think this year would have looked like for you?
Yeah, I was looking at going to community college
Mhm.
and getting a 2 year degree in who God knows what.
Mhm.
And I think I was like, oh, maybe I'll send in a pre-screen or two and just see what happens. But realistically, it was the money.
Yeah.
Last year, I had a GoFundMe and I completely raised all those funds to submit pre-screens and go to the auditions.
Mhm.
And obviously, I cannot do another GoFundMe for the same reason 2 years in a row. So it was all about, I mean, I just literally, I don't have the money and I can't ask people for the money again.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep. And so that's what we're here for, you know. Um, so you've got a lot of that. You already went to PUA, so that was all funded. PUA gave you scholarship. They're wonderful about that. And then the travel was funded by TFCA and the coaching. And then you've been coaching and now on to New York in a week from today, right? Yeah, a week from
Yeah.
today. To do an MTCA mock audition. So all of our scholars, of course, for the public out there, work with musical theater college auditions, which I founded but no longer run. But I'm involved, affiliated, do some contract work for them, and they're amazing. So that's the reason that we've worked closely with them is because they're so comprehensive in the things that they can offer. So whatever our scholars need, and whatever to whatever extent they need it, MTCA is there. So mock audition, little New York time, and then on to Florida for Young Arts Week. Ah,
Yeah.
and then home for like when's Young Arts done?
Young Arts is done, I think, on the 12th,
And
January
then you're
12th.
home for like 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah. And then to Chicago for 7
Yeah.
days, right? Yeah. That's amazing. So exciting. All right. So now, Max of the Wisdom. Even I'm even gonna ask the young people. Would you because you're our only student that's done this process twice. Thank you, UArts. Really, thank you, UArts, because it allowed us to meet you and you know,
Yeah.
we're not happy for all the UArts teachers and students, uh but you're our experienced man. So I am gonna ask this of all the scholars, but I think your advice is obviously going to come from a different perspective. So
Hmm.
what would your advice be to first of all, just students doing this process, regardless of whether they have the funds or not? Like what are some if you had your main takeaways, and I'm not going to limit you to a number or give you a number. I mean, three comes to mind, but you can have one, you know?
Yeah. Um, well, I think one of the biggest takeaways that really did its toll on me last year is comparison,
Hmm.
and someone else's journey is so different from your own, and you have to keep your eyes in front of, like, just ahead of you, because it's a school like maybe might not have passed your pre-screen and you're going to be like, oh well, I didn't pass this one but I passed that one and they passed that one and I didn't.
Yeah.
It does not matter. It's not all about how talented you are.
Hmm.
It's all you can do is say what's meant for me will come to me,
Hmm.
and what's not meant for you, if a school rejected you, you probably didn't want to go there because it would not have been the right fit.
Yeah. As long as you have done everything that you can,
Yeah.
I think that's a great guiding philosophy and certainly one that MTC operates by and I operate by as a coach and all of our coaches do. So that's great advice. Yeah. And you are like the poster child for that because like you mentioned Ayub earlier. So we're gonna actually he's gonna be one of our interviews too. You're first though. But Ayub is one of our scholars from last year who auditioned with you because you're the same age, you know, same high
Hmm.
school graduating class. And he's at Carnegie Mellon, and you actually got to see him and spend pretty significant time with him
Hmm.
at Pittsburgh Unified's going walking around Carnegie Mellon, and there that could have had one of two effects on you. I mean, many versions of this, but could have been like, "Ugh, look at where he is, and I'm good. I'm doing this again," or like, "All right, cool. Like, I get a chance to find my place." So, um, are you experiencing any of those like, or did you experience at PUA? especially because you did PUA last year. Did you experience any of those, like, like upset or just feeling uncomfortable because you were doing it again?
So yes,
Hmm.
and I wish that I wasn't, obviously, but I think I give myself grace because it's unavoidable.
Yeah, you're human.
Yeah, there's only so much I can do.
Hmm.
And I look back at, like, especially going to the Jimmies, looking at all my friends at all their schools, I'm like, oh, that's great for you. But um I just have to keep reminding myself that if like if UArts hadn't closed, all of these doors would not have opened for me. So what's meant for me is coming to me.
Hmm. Yeah, and the Jimmy's exposed you to casting directors and people
Mhm.
that have reached out about projects, and that's very exciting. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, all right, that's great advice. So, you are, obviously one of our 2024-25 scholars, and we are fully funded by donors. We have really wonderfully generous donors, especially on our board, and others who have been regular donors since we started. You're our sixth cohort of scholars. Holy cow. We lived through COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID. So can you, this is a big question, but what do you want to say to the donors, and on sincerity, like, you don't have to be flowery, or just like, what do you want to thank them for specifically? And you've already mentioned different ways in which TFC has changed the trajectory for you.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, is there anything specific that you want to point out, especially since we are asking people, if they have funds at the end of this year, which has been a very tumultuous, very, inflation ridden year. But if they're
Yeah.
looking for end of year donations, that we would like them to consider you, and this
Yeah.
literally will go directly to Max and his cohort as they finish out their journey, in February, in early February.
Mhm.
So yeah, what should we say to the donors from the perspective of someone who is, has earned this, and we never want you to feel like you have to say thank you, thank you, thank you. But I know you're grateful.
Yeah.
But like, let's be specific. What do they need to know that makes about how these donations are utilized?
I think it's easy to think that this money is just like, oh, well, they need to go to Chicago, so here's some money to pay for the flight and I'll get them to Chicago. Yes, that is the finances of it are so important. But I think what people might not realize from a non-student, non like directly associated perspective is that, like, this process is not equitable. It's not fair. And there are so many doors that will never be opened for so many talented and passionate students, purely because it's not fair and they can't afford it. And I think it's so important to break down those barriers for people as young as us. I mean, doing the process by myself last year with, I mean, I raised myself $800 from a GoFundMe. And while it kind of sounds like $800 is not a small amount of money, it went by fast. It's so easy to just see how much everything costs and just say, like, dang it, missed that one. It's not fair. So I think the donations to TFCA are so important. I'm very, like, passionate about it because it's
Yeah.
so important to break down those barriers. It's really a barrier.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you. That's Couldn't have said it better. Yeah. And they exist for people who look all different kinds of ways and have all different kinds of, life journeys and family structures and heritage. But it really does come down to the economics of it,
Mhm.
you know, and then other microaggressions are not insignificant, but you have to at least get in the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where it all starts. And yes,
Mhm.
people can do this oh, let me ask you this. So you're actually a poster child. Again, you're such a poster child. There's so many. For like, okay, you were acknowledged to have really significant talent, and with or without doing the the casting directors don't know what you're doing now. In fact, um, we could cut this if you want, but you actually had a funny encounter with a faculty person at PUA who was like, "How's school?" And you were like, "No, I didn't go to school." And that, people just they don't keep track of the individual journey. So
Yeah.
all of those casting notices and requests for submissions for professional projects would have come your way regardless. So why, for you, are you choosing the route that you want to get an education doing this, as opposed to going for it?
Yeah. I think that I have deduced that I'm getting to that limit to doing as much as I can without branching out.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's evident in just my process of doing the process last year and then doing it this year with TFCA. My pre-screen results have been drastically different.
Mhm.
It's my hypothesis is correct in that with coaching and with an education, I can get better. I mean,
Yeah.
classes work. So I think I'm so passionate about doing this as a career and doing it and just like to me there is no limit. There's no peak for me. There's no perfection.
Mhm.
All I can do is just learn and grow and intake and learn and grow.
Mhm.
That all what I want to do in my life until the day that I die is just get better. And I know that the maybe not the only way, but the best way for me moving forward is to go and learn from all these people who've done the things and have made it their life's passion to teach students.
And I think what you pointed out was important for you, the best way. And that's who we're here to serve, is the student, the people that are drawn to learning in that environment where it's about learning and not necessarily about paying your bills and working. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are people, like lots of people on Broadway, um, especially dancers, who go and do that first, but some people work early from the jimmies, for example. But yeah, the education is the part that we choose our scholars who are excited about the education and clearly like very articulate and thoughtful and are education minded people, you know. And again, not to disregard, I have lovely former students who are very successful who left school because, in fact, one of our first scholars, one of our inaugural scholars, left school with 3 years under his belt because he had done a national tour, Jeffrey Cornelius, and he said at that point where he kind of apprenticed in the most hardcore way for an entire year, being on stage twice as Evan Hansen every week, he knew that that had sort of capped out what he could learn at school, and then he had to vault himself into another learning curve, which is happening now, another learning
Mm-hmm.
experience. That was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing. Oh, you mentioned earlier, a couple of times that you have sort of a history, as many super talented people do, because everyone is so hard on themselves and perfectionists, and you know your process, and when it's not quite right, when the result isn't quite what you wanted. So
Mm-hmm.
that you had a lot of self-doubt. Has that changed in any way? And if so, what do you think has specifically affected that?
Yeah. I think last year I did this thing where when I walked in the room, I was immediately apologizing for existing and apologizing for taking up their time and apologizing for all the mistakes that I'm about to make in my pieces. And I think I want to sit here and say that that's gone, but again, I'm only human and it's still in
And you're
there.
only 19, 18, 18.
Yeah,
Yeah.
18. And I I just had the realization that I'm just like, why? What it's not serving them, it's not serving me, it's not serving anybody to apologize for doing what everybody in this room loves to do.
Right.
So I just had to say to myself, like, why change who I am when I walk into the audition room.
Mhm.
It's just going to serve every single person if I'm authentically me.
Yeah.
If I were to fake who I am to try and get into a school, am I and then I go to that school, am I expected to uphold that fake me for 4 years? So I have officially made it my mission this audition season to just be so unapologetically me and take my take my time. I'm gonna walk in the room and I'm gonna do my pieces. And if y'all love it, you love it. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah. Um, and do you think that your coaching, we might have discussed this a little or alluded to it, but that your coaching has allowed you to hone in on pieces that support that, this is me, this is who I am. Do you think what you're presenting to the schools in your application is differently and more fully you than it was last year?
I think so. I definitely do. I think last year a lot of my pieces were, well, this is my golden age piece.
Hmm.
I'm doing it just because I have to do a golden age piece. And then this is my big go-to song, and it's super high energy and fun and it's quirky. And I think a part of that was because, well, I'm overweight. So these people, obviously, they are gonna typecast me as some comedic, super over dramatic thing. And then this year, after talking with all my coaches, it's just like I'm a real person with real feelings. And when I show up on a stage to sing and dance, I'm portraying a real person with real feelings. So why not pick audition pieces that I feel like best represent me as a emotional, complex, generous human being?
Yeah. And that's a thought process that comes with maturity and self-awareness, but also probably, and tell me if I'm wrong, needed that maybe the suggestion of that and then the
Yeah,
continuous reinforcement of don't don't doubt it, trust it,
a
trust it.
hundred, a
Yeah.
hundred percent.
Yeah. And that's part of what TFCA is able to do is, again, for our donors, is to provide support at the various audition during the various audition experiences. So I was in PUA, as was your coach Marcus. Um, Marcus will be in Chicago. And so if that wavers, which again, human nature, high stakes,
Yeah.
busy, tired, um, you can just do a little touch base or a quick text, because you have such a shorthand with those people. Um, yeah, that's awesome. And that's something that comprehensiveness is so important to TFCA, and you haven't even begun to experience it yet because the two big things are coming. You
Yeah.
know, yeah, PIA was big, but I mean like the excitement of being back in New York. What are you most looking forward to about being back in New York for a little bit?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's going to be my first time there almost pretty much by
Yeah,
myself.
by yourself.
So I'm going to be feeling the things. Like I'm going to be in my winter jacket in New York, like right after New Year's. But I'm really excited to go to the mock. And I just love how it's just so much feedback.
Yeah.
And I think last year I was really afraid of feedback. I think I was very like, well, this is mine and I'm going to keep it close to
Hmm.
me. But this year, especially after coaching, it's all about what's different? What can I do different? What is your perspective?
Hmm.
I'd love to know what you think about this because it's not what I think, but I'm completely open to what you think.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, yeah, it is such a mind-blowing learning, learning late in day.
I'm
You can't even imagine. And I always say
so
it's the
excited.
best thing MTCA does, like as a single event, because it's really so, I mean, everything that MTCA does is so organized and so well thought out, but it is designed, to the minute to maximize learning and that multiple, rounds of feedback in a way that doesn't stress you out because you're not the person looking at the clock,
Yeah.
and everybody gets equal time and it's awesome. Anything else you want to, just put out in the world, especially about money or just wisdom for the young people?
Yeah. I I just think, and this is I'm in the shower rehearsing my Tony's acceptance speech. I think high school and teenage years and instilling it in young artists, it's so important. And I was talking about this earlier, to break down the barriers.
Mhm.
The barriers, it's a career that's full of barriers. I mean, out of college, I'm going to move to New York and it's going to be no, 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 sorry, no, 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 maybe
Paying rent,
no.
rent, 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 rent. Not in New
Yeah,
York, but that too.
yeah. Um, that why put up these unnecessary barriers for people when they're literally 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
And I think that money for young artists is something that is very, very often not willingly neglected, but just not thought about.
Right.
People don't think about it, but it's so, so important.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just overlooked. You're right.
Yeah.
Um,